Good evening, Councilwoman Walsh. You can begin when you're ready.
Are we unmuted?
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. This is a meeting of Wilmington's Public Safety Committee. And we'll get things going we have a somewhat short committee legislative-wise, but there might be a lot of talking going on. I'm going to call the roll before we start this committee for those who are members of the committee. I'll start with myself, and I am here. Rashima Dixon, council member. Council member Linda Gray.
Present.
Councilmember Chris Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember James Spadola.
Present.
Council President Trippy Congo.
Here.
Are there any other council members who are present?
Chairwoman, I'm here. I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute.
Councilmember
Dixon.
Dixon.
Yep.
Thank you. Who
I'm
is
here.
also vice
Nathan
chair of
Field.
this committee? I'm sorry.
Nathan Field here.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to change the agenda a little bit today too, just because Councilmember Field has a resolution and he had a very important meeting for his district that had to be changed to tonight. So he has to get off to that meeting. So Councilmember Field, you have the floor.
Great, thank you so much, Chairwoman. So I am presenting a resolution to ask our representatives in Dover to give the city of Wilmington permission to try a pilot program to use speed cameras. And first, let me just mention some background on this. The number one complaint that I receive as a district rep is related to dangerous driving and speeding being a key part of that. And as part of my efforts to find solutions whenever constituents come to me and bring this up, I've had extensive conversations with the WPD, and I've also looked at what other cities and states and municipalities have been doing. And I've spoken with our representatives in Dover, who in some cases have been there for quite a long time and dealt with these exact issues before. The tool that we don't have access to is speed cameras. They're not new, but they've become more common in nearby states and municipalities. They're all over Maryland, and they've recently been used to tremendous effect in Philadelphia. They've done a pilot program on Roosevelt Boulevard over the last year or so, and that was one of the most dangerous stretches in the entire country. 93% reduction in speeding. What they are, they're basically a camera. It's basically a red light camera that aims at problem speeders. It's programmed so that anybody traveling, let's say 10 to 12 miles over the speed limit, will get a ticket in the mail. It does not, at least the Philadelphia version, does not entail points on your license. It's a deterrent aimed to change behavior through a fine. And if you speed, you get a fine. If you don't speed, you don't get a fine. So they're basically a tool, one tool, an additional tool that could make a difference in making Wilmington streets safer. And finally, a key point here is that I'm only asking with this resolution our representatives in Dover to give Wilmington permission. So if we do get the permission, there would be a very detailed, in-depth discussion about what such a pilot program would look like. And in my efforts to get support for this resolution, I've spoken with many of my fellow city council members, and
here are some videos
some of them
I found on the web.
Some of them have questions or objections, but all of that would come after we get permission to have a pilot program. So with that, those are the key points I wanted to make, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think the one question I have, you're sending this down to Dover, and I know you have been in contact with some of the representatives from Dover. In sending this down to Dover, if it passes, do you have anybody that you've chosen to do this in Dover? Because, you know, just sending it down there, it could end up in the trash.
Representative Brady suggested that he has been working on this for 15 or 20 years. This is not the first attempt. And he suggested that it would be helpful to his efforts, along with Senator Sarah McBride, if City Council just gave an indication of their interest in such a
Yolanda McCoy.
program.
Which phone number for Yolanda calling now?
But this is also a initiative for the entire city of Wilmington, is that correct?
It could be. So basically what I'm saying is that it's simply legally the city of Wilmington cannot currently use speed cameras. Maybe we have a really robust discussion and we decide not to do it. All I'm pushing for with this resolution is that we have the ability to try it out, and we would have a deep discussion. Certain neighborhoods, it would be data driven, and it would be maybe some areas might not need it, and some members of council don't want them in their district. So there would be a deep conversation, and all of these details would be discussed, and local by local district concerns would definitely be a big part of that.
Thank you, members of council. Anyone with a question or a comment?
Can you see our hands? There's 2 or 3 of us.
No, I can't actually, but now
Okay.
I see you.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Councilmember Gray.
Also, Xanthia and Councilmember Johnson are after me. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Madam
you.
Chair. Councilman Field and I have discussed this, and I used to adjudicate these cases in JP court, so I have a lot of concern about the program, pilot program or otherwise. And I had a discussion with the police a while ago, because our main complaint with speeding are these 3-wheelers or motorbikes, not really cars as much. And they were using a different way of tracking them and charging them for speeding. And I don't want to share that, because I don't know if the police department has shared it with everyone else. But I would much prefer to devote any type of monies to the program that they're using now to track speeders. And my concerns generally, and Councilman Field has said these would be ironed out, but I have concerns about it is, you know, are the cameras calibrated? Can they distinguish between 2 cars that are close together? Is the company that's hired going to have an incentive to give tickets? You know, how do we determine how many miles over before you get a ticket? I mean, is that going to be a vote of council? Is that something that's data ridden? And also, what I heard from Councilman Field is that people in the community were complaining about speeders. Well, from just our shot cameras and everything, the community doesn't have very much to say about where cameras go. It's usually a committee that does that. So I have all these concerns even about a pilot program. So thank you.
Councilmember Oliver. Councilmember Oliver.
Yes, I hear now. Thank you.
You have a question?
Now I put my hand down. I wasn't, it was something wrong with my volume.
Okay, thank you.
I mean,
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, Councilmember Field, I do have to hats off to you. I know you did reach out and we had some general discussion. And I guess my more of it from a fiscal perspective is cost, but I guess we'll have to, you know, look at that down the road. I guess our existing, I guess would it be our existing provider, which is Xerox, I guess they would have to be involved in the conversation, or at least is that your vision right now in terms of what the program would look like?
Again, I just want to emphasize the very last point that I made. All of these details would be subject to a very robust discussion. And there's many different ways that many different versions of what a pilot program could look like. And to be honest, in terms of the provider, I haven't thought too deep into that question, because we need to just get that formal permission to even try it first. But I absolutely hear your concerns, and cost is definitely a huge factor.
Okay, that's all. I mean, we can certainly talk that about. I am supportive of the initiative. I just generally just wanted to know about how much it's going to cost, but we can cross that bridge later. Thank you.
Councilmember Darby.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. I want to say that I am opposed to the speed cameras. Historically, speed cameras such as red light cameras, fees and fines target Black and brown people. They are predatory on communities. And if there's a organization, the National Fees and Fines, that have stated that overall, they are not effective in reducing reducing speeding. And the same thing for red light cameras, but we're not even going to hit on that tonight. But in regards to the speeding tickets, I am opposed to it. It's predatory. It's just another way for the city to try to make money off people. And we already have issues with fees and fines in the city that we're trying to work on now. And this is going to add an additional barrier to communities. And we don't need any more predatory fees and fines in our community, especially when we know that Black and brown people, and this is a majority city of Black and brown people, will be affected by this. So I am against this legislation. I hope people down at the General Assembly do not pass this. I hope they're opposed to this. And if they do look at this, I will be lobbying to make sure that these state representatives and legislators do not pass this. Thank you.
Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too have some questions. I think the concept is really good, but after doing some of my research from the last 5 years in the city of Wilmington, I was unable to find anything that stated it was a death toll for people speeding. I'm against people speeding, but my research here in Wilmington, not in Pennsylvania, it was just some fender benders, and I think one lady's in her yard or something. But I don't see anything in the last 5 years with speeding, where speeding caused anyone to die. So I would be in favor of money from Dover for the shot spotters, with all the crime we have here. So if they're going to give us some money, I would like some cameras for some more spot shotters. So, I mean, because of the crime, like I said, the research I did, I saw a couple of people were killed on the highway, but not here in Wilmington.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just jumping on, and I'm not sure what I missed before getting on, but I did have an opportunity to read the legislation, and I also got a chance to speak to the sponsor as well. However, when I looked at the legislation, a lot of the examples were cities that were much, much bigger than ours. And as I shared, I think that whenever we're comparing Wilmington to other cities, I think we should always consider thinking of comparing it to cities that are the similar size of Wilmington in terms of population. That's number one. Also, we have not had an issue with speeding that resulted in deaths, which I think that were their number one reason for going to that extreme of getting speed cameras, because again, that is serious. And I personally would take deaths serious. And I think legislators or those that work to get those speed cameras up did that as a result of the data that's connected with deaths. And we have not had deaths. I do respect Council Member Field for wanting to support apparently his constituent or constituents as it relates to addressing speeding. However, I do think that there are other measures that could be explored to address the speeding before going from 0 to 10. And what I mean by saying 0 to 10 is that if there's nothing in place right now and we decide to go with a speed camera, I think that's pretty extreme without exploring other measures. So in the 4th district, if this passes, I really think that there are other measures should be considered. I think more thought should go into this, more research should go into what other ways can we address the speeding. I'm currently doing that within the 4th district. I have 2 areas, 2 communities actually, where I had to address the same thing. So I'm already working on it. We're working on some solutions, and they're definitely not, it's not a speed camera, no way, because I feel as though it's just adding another unnecessary financial burden on our constituents. And when you think about the times we're living in, the times we're coming out of post-COVID, I just feel as though this is just not the time to put that on our constituents if they're already addressing and dealing with this the red light camera, and now is speeding. And then I just think it's a bit extreme. But if there's a pilot, I just ask, please do not put the pilot cameras in the 4th district. I'm already working on it. Thank you.
Councilmember Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also had a conversation with the sponsor of the bill as well, and had some of the same similar concern as far as like the cost, as well as putting that penalty on our constituents, because as we do for other fines and fees. The way I'm just listening here, because I did get emails from Happy Valley and Highlands regarding, the fact that they're the ones who are asking for it. I don't know, and this is just a suggestion, if the pilot just happens in the 8th district, since they're primarily the individuals who are asking for it. But also they have gone through previously of going with Brian Mitchell through the process of identifying ways of how they can decrease the speed within their areas. And a lot of them have not worked out over the years. So this was their suggestion that came to me from them via email. So I know they did do some of their due diligence over the course of the years to help figure out a way for their families and their children to go out and play without feeling like they're going to go out and get hit by a car. So I just wanted to make sure that that was also added into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gray, second time.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that there is something else the police are using, and I think that Councilman Field should explore that with them, and also the Highlands should explore that, because they told me they're using it in the 1st district, because we have a problem on Lee Boulevard with the bikers. So, I mean, I'll email the sponsor and tell them what it is. I mean, it's not a secret to me. I just don't want to publicize it. And maybe we can find out if that can be extended to the Highlands and to other areas that are having problems with speeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no other council members, hands up. Would anyone from the audience like to speak? Seeing no hands up, we'll go back to council. And now back to the sponsor. Councilmember Field.
Madam Chair, this is WITN. There is one hand that went up.
In the audience?
Yes.
Okay. I will try and see who that is. Christina Kay.
Hi, thank you, Chairwoman, for the opportunity to speak. I just kind of wanted to echo Councilwoman Harley and Dixon's remarks from the community side of it. You know, financially, we are still coming out of COVID-19. You know, and from the public and the taxpayer side of it, you know, we've not heard what the costs really are going to be in terms of what it's going to cost when people are fighting these tickets. You know, there's a lot of additional expense that goes into a program like this that I again just wanted to echo their sentiments in that this isn't the right time to be exploring something like that. There's a lot of other issues that could be addressed. You know, just in my driving around the city, we've got street lights that are hanging off, or you know, the casings are falling in the wrong direction. There are other ways that we could address the issue. So I just, you know, wanted to again echo their sentiments. This isn't the right time.
Seeing no one else, council sponsor.
Great. Let me just thank you, Councilwoman Walsh. Just a real quick response to some of the very valid comments. The goal of speed cameras is actually not to have fines. And when speed cameras work by changing behavior, and when they work, nobody's getting fines. And let me just cite the statistics from Philadelphia. In the first month of the pilot program on Roosevelt Boulevard, 700,000 people were issued a ticket. By month 7, 11,000 people were issued a ticket. The same number of people were driving along Roosevelt Boulevard. So it changed the behavior. Almost very comparatively few people are getting fines, and the stretch is a lot safer. So I don't want, to me, this is not about fines. You know, I don't want people to get fines. And if it's done properly, fining really doesn't become an issue. And in conclusion, all of these things can and will, if this resolution passes and if our colleagues in Dover can get this passed, all of these questions will be the subject of a very robust debate, and everybody's concerns will be taken into full consideration. Thank you.
Okay, it's up to you. This is a resolution, so we don't have to vote it out. Actually, if you want it on the agenda or not. So you can deal with the city clerk on that one if you want. Mr. Field, Councilmember Field.
Yeah, so I would, what needs to be done in order for it to be on the agenda possibly on Thursday?
Madam Chair, this is Maribel Sejo, clerk.
Yes.
It is currently on the June 17th council agenda.
Okay, there you go. See how fast Maribel works? So that is it, Mr. Field. It's on the agenda. You don't need a vote in this committee. You just need a presentation.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go on to our next item on the agenda. Good afternoon, Police Department, Chiefs and staff.
Hi. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. And with me, actually not in the same room, I have Inspector Ash and Inspector Emery for any questions that might be asked. Chief Robert Tracy.
Thank you, Chief. It seems impossible, but this resolution concerns the police department commencing a new academy class. Do you want to speak to that, Chief, for a bit?
Yes, Madam Chair. Resolution regarding the Wilmington Police Department commencing academy class As we have in the past, we're coming to City Council, present a resolution to prepare to commence the hiring process for our next Police Academy class. As you know, the 100 Wilmington Police Academy graduated on April 30th, and the 19 newest members of the department are now on patrol. With retirements and our usual attrition, we have now surpassed the threshold to start the next hiring process. Our authorized strength is 319 police officers. Our actual strength, how many police officers are currently employed by the department, is 303. This puts us just under the 95% of our authorized strength. It's at 303.5 right now. We can bring us at below 95%. Our hope is to very soon begin the process to hire for the next academy class so we can ensure we continue to maintain adequate staffing levels. Our Human Resources Division and recruitment teams are always working to recruit, even outside the hiring processes, so we can engage with possible future applicants. Once we begin the hiring process, we then reach out to anyone who has expressed interest to provide them with an application. We look forward to the next academy class through this process.
I imagine you have your whole team put together, including your diversity one, with suggestions from council members from the past.
Yes, absolutely. And what we've done is we've put out a quarterly report. The last one that was just out, April 1st, it came out, and Councilwoman Gray talked about and suggested that about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. We've continued now a year and a half of doing this. The next one will be out on July 1st. And it talks about our recruitment efforts, our efforts to attract diverse candidates to become police officers in the city of Wilmington. This has been discussed many times at this council meeting, and we continue to look at how we can bring in minority applicants, make it welcoming, and try to make sure that we can increase that balance. Where last class was absolutely, we were successful in doing that, and we want to build off of that. On the Zoom call with us, who heads up the recruitment and oversees the administrative side and the academy class, is Inspector Chuck Emery, and working with Captain Bowers in Human Resources. They oversee the process for the recruitment, application, the hiring, and getting us through and overseeing the academy class and a successful class when we bring the recruits out. So if there's any specific questions, it came up last time as far as looking for diversity. Inspector Emery is an HBCU graduate, as well as Captain Bowers, reflective of the diversity in our department. So I wanted to make sure that we had them in there, and anything that they feel needs to be changed, working with a community, working with the faith-based community, working with colleges, working with some of the things that we can start attracting even more diversity. I gave them a lot of latitude to come with suggestions and how we can do to increase that. Just putting this all in context, there's many articles that continue to come out. I talked about this before several months ago about a crisis in recruitment, bringing police officers on, because a lot of departments are losing through attrition and resignations. Many officers are not able to hire. We're not seeing this. We're doing natural attrition. I'm happy to see that, but I just want to make sure that we don't get too far behind. And that's why I'm coming together and coming before you with the resolution to get this process started.
Thank you, Chief. Do any council members have anything? Councilmember Gray?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to compliment the recruitment efforts of the police department. I've been following it, and I think they've hit just about every available or known to me minority or Black and brown institution. So I think they're doing a good job there. And like the chief just said, I think hiring is down in most cities. I think Philadelphia is missing like 21 officers or something. But besides that, can some of the money for the new officers be spent to hire people to assist the officers who are proficient in mental health, community services, rather than all just straight police officers? I really think that that would help our force. And the statistics have shown that a lot of the calls for the police department are not related to real police work. They're related more to community service. So There's many cities across the United States that have incorporated this into their police department. In fact, I think the county partners with the state to have two people work with the county police. So I think it would be great if we could have one or two of these officer positions for mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, Chief Tracy. Yeah, I along the same line of Councilmember Gray. I do think this is an interesting time. I know we went through this a year and a half ago with the new academy class, and where we are now, is it a consideration that we actually could start thinking new division? And again, this is maybe a bigger question, but it seems like no one wants to be police officers, despite it being an exciting career. But I think we do need to, as Wilmington, start to rethink what our department looks like. And that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson, are you finished?
Yeah, so it was more of a just comment. I just along the same line.
No, I thought it was, but I wasn't sure if you.
Yeah, it was more of a comment. I just not to say I'm not supportive of the academy class. It seems to be each time it's harder and harder to find officers. So maybe we should be thinking of other ways to reimagine our police department. That's all.
And actually, Councilmember Gray, when you said you thought they were down like 21 police officers in Philadelphia, it's more like 2,100, I believe. It's an outrageous amount of police officers. New York, it's twice as bad. And they're just not getting the applicants at all. So, Councilmember Darby.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just making a comment. I would be supportive of academy class if there was investment and talk in creating community response team. There's 3 sectors and each sector, I believe there's 3 districts. So we can create 2 to 3 person teams that would include a social worker who would deal with homelessness, domestic violence, some other issues to provide support. We could also look at a mental health clinician, and thirdly, look at an alcohol and drug counselor. So we will have a 2 to 3 person team working in each sector or each district on being able to answer to those calls. I think getting more police officers, more money for that. That means more tasers, more guns, more money is going into the police department. And I really think we need to focus on community.
Councilmember Darby, this is to refresh in the class and the people that are leaving the police department, and stick to that subject.
All right, I'm done.
Thank you. Councilmember Congo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, what for the last class that graduated? What was their what was the makeup of that class as far as diversity, and what's the overall makeup for the department?
That number is dynamic, Council President. I can get that back to you, but I believe it was almost 40% minority in the last class, and overall in the department, the breakdown. These are rough numbers, but I can get those exact numbers back to you and the council.
All right, thank you. Just a follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, Council
and
President.
we have this numbers is for minorities, and then specifically Black and brown officers too.
Yes,
and just another follow up. Has there been any discussion about? I'm not sure how true this is, and I'm not sure how this works, but I was talking to some officer friends of mine, and they said a lot of the reason that officers leave and go to the state or go to the county, well, when that happens, it's because of pay, but that could be adjusted if Dover acts on it. How true is that?
In my time here, sir, I knew some had left other departments, but it's very rare that we've been losing any officers to. I think one went to the state police in my over 4 years here in this position, and I think even the county was doing a hiring process in the last 6 months where they would give a $10,000 signing bonus, and none of our officers took that $10,000 signing bonus. So we're in the middle of contract negotiations with both rank and file and the captains and inspectors, and I think that's all being looked at as far as making sure that we stay competitive. So that's in the process, but there is some little bit of disparity in pay. But I think the last contracts kind of brought us where the hiring salary for a police officer was competitive with both state and county and within the region. I think that helped us attract more officers to the Wilmington Police Department. And I also like to believe that, you know, the officers that do apply to an urban area want to work in an urban area, as I have in 3 different cities. It's certainly something that I think it's different type of policing, and certainly a desire is out there, sir.
Okay, thank you. Just one more follow-up, Madam Chair.
President.
Chief, are you also able to get us those, like the base salaries of the state, the county, and our police departments? Can you get those to us, please?
I can look for. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get the exacts, but there's certain rough information that's out there that we'll look to see if we can research, and we'll get that over to you, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Make sure any of that information is sent to the whole committee, please, Chief.
Absolutely. I'll be putting it through the chair and to be disseminated, ma'am.
Thank you. And the vice chair. Thank you. Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To make a statement, I mean, just to keep hearing it, everybody's saying nobody's interested in the police force. Nobody's interested. I mean, I don't.
Can't hear you. Cannot hear you, Councilmember.
Okay, thank you. I said, thank you, Madam Chair. I said, everybody keeps saying there's no interest in the police force. Why are we even putting up for a police academy? I think that's the wrong attitude to have if you're really out there recruiting. And I do have to agree with all these mental health calls. And I just don't see the officers really walking around the neighborhood like they should. I think they could be doing a lot more. So I don't see the purpose of it, really.
Well, the purpose of it is if they're not filled, do we wait until we don't have any police officers left? Like, vacancies have to be filled. So.
Okay. From a follow-up question, how many vacancies need to be filled now? I missed that.
Okay, this is only being introduced because we've hit below the 95%, and he is required to do that once it hits below. He's not doing this to try and pad the department.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One, I had wanted to be acknowledged. I don't know if it's important since I'm not on this committee, but I still like to be it to be recorded or whatever gets done. But my comment is that one, can we start exploring how we could possibly get into the high schools to start exposing our high school students to consider having a career in law enforcement? I think that will go a long way in terms of planting a seed, especially in some of the schools where we know that we can connect and reach out to more people of color in all races, but especially people of color. So my comment is that I'm hoping, and I know that's a process, I know that that's going to take some time, but based on the conversations that we've been having since I've been on council, I think that we have to start thinking about other avenues and other opportunities where we can reach people of color and start reaching them early. So by the time they get of age, they can have some idea and interest as it relates to law enforcement.
Okay, and how about if we do this? because the chief gets this every single meeting. Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? How about if each of us sends an email to the chief with our recommendations of what we think they should be doing for recruitment? Because quite frankly, this is not what this resolution is about. It's simply about recruitment. It's not about how they're going to be recruited or what type of programs are going to be put together. That's a whole separate section. So if we all could do that, I think it would save us a heck of a lot of time, and I think it would save the department a heck of a lot of time too. So thank you. Councilmember Fields, S on your name.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to be recognized. I know I'm not a part of this committee, but I would like to be recognized. Secondly, I want to make sure that I'm saying this correctly, because I don't want to offend anyone. So now I'm gonna just say what I gotta say. So here's where I'm at with this. If the percentage is at 95% or whatever the captain is saying it is, and he's putting a resolution forth, is this resolution for just going like saying, okay, listen, this is what's coming ahead, and I need to move forward with this. I need to get an okay for this. Is that what this resolution is for?
Exactly.
Okay,
He is
so
required to do this every time he falls below a certain number.
Okay,
And
so this is basically,
that's not saying that that's not saying the class is going to start tomorrow or next week. You know, we still have to vote on it Thursday, but he has the ability to start putting a class together. And part of that is, how do we recruit people? So, which is why it's imperative, if we have ideas for the chief, to get them to him now, so he can discuss and share them with his people to broaden the way we recruit.
okay, can I have a follow-up question, Madam Chair?
Yes, council member.
So again, I'm going to ask you, so he's just basically asking if he could start the process because he's at a specific number at this particular time.
He's kind of maybe not asking because he's required to tell us.
Oh, so okay, so this is a requirement that has to be done when it's at a certain percentage. When
Exactly.
When the police is at a certain percentage, this is protocol for him to do this. So once this is done, it goes to the floor, we vote and say whatever everybody has to say, and then it's another process. So it's basically, yeah, okay. I get what you're saying. I just wanted to kind of understand, because I'm getting confused about all the other stuff that's going in. I mean, I think I know I've had a conversation with him to whereas ideas and ways that we can definitely recruit the Black and brown community. And I know he's listening to me. I'm hoping he's listening to me, as well as I'm hoping he's listening to all the other council members.
But that is also part of it. That's also part of a different conversation.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Well, I'm gonna just leave it at that then. I just wanted to make it clear. I just wanted to understand that this was just an ask, or this is what he was required to do when it was at a certain percentage. Thank you, Madam
Absolutely.
Chair.
Thank you.
I'm just new to this. That's all. Confused.
No, thank you for clearing that up. Councilmember Harley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So one, I think one simple way could have been to communicate it is that it's codified that that WPD make council aware when it's time to start another class. And I agree that we can explore more regarding other opportunities and suggestions. However, since we are in a public meeting and it's around a class getting started, and we have the conversation all the time about brown and Black people getting recruited, it has been very helpful for me, to hear different ideas, and it's definitely connected. And I know we have other agenda items that we need to address, but I think sometimes this is the time to share if it's connected. If it's totally unrelated, then I get waiting to another time. But I feel that some information that we share with one another is valuable, is beneficial, and is relevant. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I also want to add that thank you, Councilwoman Brigida, for getting that cleared up. And even with that being cleared up, I still feel the same way, even if it is codified in regards to a new police academy being commencing. So that's all I just want to say for the record. It's still the same either way for me, the comment I made.
Council President Congo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to agree with Councilwoman Harley that this is definitely relevant. It's good for us. When else can we talk about our concerns about recruitment, except for when the chief comes before us to ask to let us know about a recruitment class beginning. This is the perfect opportunity for the public and council to talk about it. And it seems like I was offended, honestly, by your tone. Now you try to shut down a council member from just inquiring about something that we have been talking about for years. You're right, because the numbers are not getting better. So we're going to continue to talk about it until the numbers improve, and we want to be a part of that process. But I don't think that we should feel that we're being shut down and not allowed to talk about our concerns when they're not only our concerns, they're the community's concerns. So I don't want any community members to feel they can't talk about it because this is the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Councilmember Congo, I'm not trying to be mean or anything else to anybody else. I'm simply trying to do my job, period. And the job is just to accept the chief notifying us that the time has come that he's below his numbers. That's it. Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with my other council members. More frequently, discussions have been shut down in committee meetings because the chair, specifically you, think that they're not relevant. When else are we supposed to discuss things if it's not in committees? And this is not the only committee. So I'm just putting that out there. I've noticed it. I was going to bring it up in general, that discussion should be allowed to flow and progress. But the other thing is that you cut off Councilwoman Oliver's question and answered for the police department. I would like the police department to answer. How many vacancies are there now?
There's 16 vacancies.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Any other questions from council members? Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, Chief, just, I think it's kind of a circular discussion. We talk about getting more Black and brown recruits, but I don't, is there a discussion in law enforcement ranks about the impact of, would you say, post-George Floyd era? Again, I know it's going back to a different conversation we need to have more extensively, but do we need the number of officers we have? Because, if it's such an unpopular career for Black and brown youth, which it is, then I think we're going to keep beating our head against the wall. So that's all I'm talking about, is maybe that conversation about reimagining what our department looks like, maybe different divisions. I think that's something we should be exploring instead of trying to force Black and brown youth to do something they frankly don't want to do. So are you having those conversations in national law enforcement circles about post-George Floyd, just what to do with Black youth?
Absolutely. We're actually having that conversation for all demographics coming to policing. It's down in all areas, not just Black and brown recruits. It's down. If you take a look at a study that just came out in New York City, 8 million people, 40,000 police officers. their class is usually every 6 months. It's 2,000 police officers should be in their academy. They got a little over almost 500 candidates. That could even fill 25% of one class in 6 months. At a time when I came onto policing and took the test back in 1982, there was about 60, 70,000 people that were candidates to become a police officer. Yeah, there it is. But, you know, I feel that we're coming out of this. I think we're looking at reform. We're having those conversations. We're having demonstrations and protests are starting to die down. People's voices are being heard. We're doing things with the state legislature. We're looking at reform. We're having those type of conversations where I believe ebbs and flows happens in policing. But therefore, we already have a budgeted strength that went through the budget of 319 police officers. Every police chief would love to have more police officers, but we also have to make sure that we have to make sure that we are allocating them to make sure that we can do the best job we can, keeping the city safe and satisfying all the needs of 911 calls and then proactive policing. That being said, I have all the confidence in the world that we'll be able to fill this academy class with a diverse group like we did last time. And we were able to get a class out there that was very diverse. And I think this is a noble profession. I think this is a calling. And I think there's plenty of candidates of all demographics that would love to be policing officers. So there might be a little bit of a lull, but the ones that are applying, they really want it. So it might be less applicants, but certainly someone that wants to be a police officer rather than someone trying to figure out a career.
And as a follow-up, Chief, thank you very much for, I think, clearly answering my question. And I guess the follow-up is, have we looked at modifying the criminal record requirements in terms of maybe drug possession, minor offenses? Not saying we could allow everyone in, but maybe at the state level, if we can allow expungement or, I know there's clean slate bills right now, but just the way we can have more applicants who might have a minor arrest on the record. And as long as it's not, violent or something, we could have them as part of the department. That's something.
There's certain thresholds that we look at, but there's certainly some things in the past where we look at people's past and we do background checks that shouldn't be police officers. That's why the percentages that apply, that get hired, I think we got to make sure that we do a thorough job, because if we hire police officers and have a problem years down the road, we're going to look back and say, did we lower the standards and did that affect what's happening with the police force, especially with the added scrutiny, which I believe we should have, the transparency that we should have. I worry about lowering standards because it actually affects all demographics. And then we start to have police officers that probably shouldn't be police officers. And then when they're on through collective bargaining agreements and things, we might have more problems down the road.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chief.
Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question to the chief is, the 319, I know that's supposed to be like our fully staffed police force, but we do understand that a lot of those people are actually on short and long-term disability. So that's still not quite exactly what our numbers are, or I guess were you at 303 or something now? And correct. So with that being stated, do we still keep people who are actually long-term disability? Like if we know that they're actually unable to go back onto the police force, like I'm just trying to figure that out. If they are actually unable to still perform a duty as a police officer, are they still on the roll and we still keep them as police officers like for a certain amount of time? It's just something that came to my mind because I don't think we've ever been at our full capacity with short-term, long-term people out. They do, in the service, in the military, things of that nature.
That's correct, Councilwoman. It's always going to be a percentage of where you're at. You're going to have officers that are out on FMLA. You're going to have them out on injury. This job does create some inherent risks. We have to honor those that are in the military, and we honor what they do. And if they're going to deploy a certain amount of times a year, or they're going to go be deployed for a year or two, that type of leave. With all those things, it brings us down 21 officers down below the 303. So we really have 282 officers today that are eligible for the street because of the things that you just talked about. And that number is dynamic. And the thing that you talked about, long-term injuries, one of the things this administration took a look at and has been doing for the last several years with city HR, our city human resources, the mayor's office, the dispensary, and the Wilmington Police Department. We took a look at people that had medical conditions that possibly couldn't be back on the street, and we made sure that we took a good look at them. And there's been some that we want to make room for officers that can go on the street. So it's something this administration has looked at. We looked at medical separations of those that are not going to be back on the street, and we took a good look at it where some are no longer here, and they were treated well going out the door, but because they couldn't perform the job anymore, they have been separated, and that allows us to hire more police officers to get on the street.
All right, thank you for that answer, Chief.
Thank you. From the mayor's office, Tanya Washington wanted a moment.
She just stepped out.
Okay.
Madam Chair, she just stepped out of the room.
All right. Well, she stepped out, she loses. No one from the public has their hand up. So we're going to present this to council for a vote on Thursday.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you for your-
may I ask the chief something? Madam Chair?
Does it have to do with the resolution?
No, it was a request I made to him. I just wanted to remind him.
And you couldn't pick up the phone to do that or send an email? Or you had
Thank
to be
you, Madam Chair, for being so helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Now have an update on the body cameras. Back to you, Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since our last update, we're happy to share that we have completed training of each member of our department, with the exception of those that are on long-term leave and military leave and FMLA. So now officers in every division, including myself, as you can see on this camera, and you can see with my inspectors, command staff were outfitted with body-worn cameras. The training went well, and our technical resource unit with a sergeant and 3 police officers is ensuring that the program is implemented effectively and provided technical support and assistance to our department. As part of our grant from the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance, we were working with the federal government as they review and provide feedback on our policy, which is published on our website, and our implementation of the program. The technical assistance component of the grant is very important, and we will ensure that we continue to follow national best practices in the administration of our body-worn camera program. So in summary, we've deployed our equipment and has been going very well so far, ma'am.
Okay. Chief, there were a couple of comments going around on Facebook that people had been stopped by police officers and they asked them about body cameras that they had on, and they were told that they were not running. Could you explain? And I have to say, I myself thought that if an officer had a body camera on and they were on the street and they were working their shift, that camera was on all the time. And I come to find out that's not true. Could you explain to us when the cameras are on?
Sure. I'm going to give like a very high level, but I have Inspector Cecilia Ash that can go into more of the detail. That's been teaching policy, not only rolling it out, teaching the policy and what's expected of our police officers. If there's a certain complaint that you see on Facebook, I encourage anyone to ensure that they call the number, make a complaint if there's something going on, so we can investigate it through our office professional standards. But To be clear, and I'll have Inspector Ash go through it, right now, as you're looking at me, the camera is on. And right now, it's buffering every 30 seconds. So it keeps, until I hit twice on this, it goes into audio. It's already in visual mode, and it goes back 30 seconds from the time I hit it. And the reason being is that if an officer gets into it, it's always on, and it's always recording. But it goes back 30 seconds back to try to capture what happened before an incident. Say an incident happens where we have to take immediate action, and the officer doesn't have a chance to hit this. Once everything's under control, they hit the camera. Once they have everything under control, and it buffers back to those previous 30 seconds, which you might think is short, but it's a very long time when we use that in examples. So the policy that we're training our officers on, Inspector Ash, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'd love her to go through more of the specifics in the policy of training. And then I also always encourage anyone that has a question or felt the situation wasn't handled right for our police officers, please let us investigate it. Let us find out. Let us, or even if we have to make a phone call to the person or an official complaint, we want to educate people as much as possible, because it is a new process. It is a new process that we're training people on and ensuring if there is something that happened out in the street, we want to make sure, is it, number one, a training issue where we have to make sure we train our officers, or is it a disciplinary issue where something's not being done with the camera that we have to address as well? So Inspector Ash, can you please just bring us through some of the protocol and the type of training that we've been doing and the continued training that we're going to do?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. So in reference to the chief's comments, he is accurate in how the camera is recording. Per policy, officers are to activate their cameras anytime they engage in a law enforcement where they take a law enforcement power or engage in a law enforcement action. So, you know, you may have officers that are walking in the community and their camera is recording in a buffering mode, but it's not physically activated. So what we find a lot of times in some of the questions that we're fielding from the community is it's a terminology confusion. So I would encourage, as the chief indicated, I would encourage anyone that has questions is more than welcome to contact the police department, and we can look into those matters on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. Council members, does anyone have any comments or questions?
My hand is up, Chair.
Councilmember Darby?
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions in regards to how footage is reviewed. And on top of that, will there be specific rules under, is there like weekly review of footage to talk about how to improve policing and identify mistakes? And I can stop there. Those are the first two questions on, how often is it being reviewed, and is it being reviewed to talk about improving policing and identifying mistakes that have been made?
Madam Chair, may I have Inspector Ash go into this question?
Yes, Chief.
Okay, Inspector Ash, please.
Yes, in reference to your question, Councilwoman, yes, the body cams are reviewed daily, and corrective action is taken by any supervisor as they're reviewing those or that footage to correct any type of issues, and those issues are addressed.
May I follow up, Chair?
Yes, Councilmember.
Yes. How long are we keeping the body cam footage? And is it, on top of that, is it being treated like a court file where if it's needed in court proceedings or matters, that people are allowed to have access to it?
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask Inspector Ash again, if you allow.
Inspector Ash?
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilwoman. So yes, the footage is recorded and retained based off of Delaware law, Title 29. I can't quote the exact section number, but I can get that for you. And we adhere to the different retention categories based off of the type of event that is recorded. So for example, an arrest is maintained for the life, I think it's 100 years that we have to maintain those files. As far as the sharing of the video information, yes, it is treated as evidence, and that is corresponded with the Attorney General's office, who has an identical platform with Axion. It's a prosecutor platform, and that information is shared daily with them as cases are presented to court.
Thank you. May I follow up with another question, please?
Yes, council member, go ahead.
So with the body cam footage, is there accessibility for the public to view it online so that civilians are able to see what is happening?
Madam Chair, I don't know if it's from our end. I couldn't understand the question. I think it's
Yeah,
broken.
nobody could understand. Nobody could understand.
Did y'all hear me?
question.
Y'all hear me now?
Yes, now.
Y'all hear me better? I was asking if the body cam footage, is it available for the public to view it online?
Inspector Ash, please.
Madam Chair, the answer to that and Councilwoman would be no. It is not accessible to the public to view online.
I'm sorry, repeat that again, please.
The video is not accessible online for the public to view. Most of the content that deals with law enforcement is protected through criminal investigation means under the FOIA, but it's not available in an online capacity.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, it's not available to the public in any type of capacity. Is that correct?
I would defer to city law on that to be able to answer when it would not be accessible, just by statute.
Well,
Can I follow up?
If I may intervene, Ms. Darby. I would make sure the department is the one who asked city law that question, just so you all have the answers too, so that it can be answered to a city council member also.
And another question that I have, I know the 107 established a civilian review board, and the civilian review board was given money in our last budget, which I think is great. Will the civilian review board have access to body cam footage?
That's something that's still within the state legislature. If the law enforcement bill of rights right now, as they stand, there'll be some things that'll complicate that. We're not sure exactly where that goes, and it'd have to be a further conversation, understanding where everything plays out and how a civilian complaint review board is going to be put together, and we define what the responsibilities are. So very difficult to answer that question right now until we kind of can refine exactly how it's going to be set up, if and when it's set up.
Thank you. Is the body cam footage in high resolution or low?
It's a
That's
very
another question too. Go ahead, Chief, answer that.
it's actually very, very good resolution. It's right now picking you up off. It works better than many cameras that I've ever used in video.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I had a follow-up question to the resolution. So are we able to get the specifics to what it is, the resolution? Because I know you said it's very good resolution, but that's subjective.
Okay, it's actually, we can get you the exact pixels and the resolution on that. That was within our RFP to make sure when we put out a purchase order, but we'll follow up with you unless Inspector Ash has those numbers off the top of her head. It can give you the type of resolution in pixels, and we can send that over to the chair to make sure that everyone has it.
And I have one more question, and I'll be finished.
Well,
for tonight. Once arrested, well, for this presentation, but once arrested, do I have access? So like I am like the person who's arrested by a police officer, and I want to say a police officer did something to me. Do I have access to those body cam footage?
So
I understand the public doesn't, but I, as the victim.
As a council member, if you're arrested for a charge by the police, I hope that doesn't happen, ma'am. But if you're ever arrested, that will be, as we just talked about, the inspector talked about a shared drive. The Attorney General's office has that information and can go in to get that video shared for prosecution of your arrest, and then it would be shared. Then that would be a discovery shared with your counsel should you be arrested, ma'am.
Thank you, Chief. I want to talk about me. Hopefully, I don't get arrested anytime
No, I hope not, ma'am.
It was just an example. But
It was
thank you. That's
hypothetical.
Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you. Councilman McDarby asked all the questions, but I would like to follow up with the chief and ask him how heavy. I mean, I know we talked about it when I saw you the other day. How heavy are the cameras on you as a whole? What's the weight on them?
I would just guessing maybe a pound at the most. But it does pull on you. But it's the type of when you see these things. Inspector, am I allowed to do this? I'm going to turn off the filming. I don't want to get in trouble with my inspector. If you take this off, because she does the training, if you pop this here, it actually slides within your shirt, and it's very, like right now, they'd have to rip my shirt off to get this off. So it's definitely, it pulls a little bit, but just like anything else that you're wearing, all the other equipment, it's something to get used to at first, but now it's second nature to me, and I often forget it's there, man. But I also make sure it's on.
Okay, I just wanted to follow up and just say I'm glad session 107 we're able to approve the body cams that everybody was talking about. So kudos to 107, and I'm glad you were able to receive them body cams, and y'all keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Councilmember Johnson.
I know we don't have anybody from law on the line, but it is just for a point of clarity for the public and members of council. It is we maximize, I think, the extent under the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, LIBOR, that we can get publicly released information. So I think where we're at right now is, unfortunately, it does rest, as Chief said, with the state legislature. So if anyone wants to advocate down there for those changes so we can make information more publicly available, please do so. But it is unfortunately out of City Council's hands at this point.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other council members? Christina Kay.
Thank you, Chairwoman, for another opportunity to speak. My question.
I can't hear you, please.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Not very well.
Sorry about that. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my question is just in relation to actually the disciplinary process. For example, when we talk about, members of the community that are saying that the body cameras are not on when they're having interactions, if that is, reviewed on a daily basis, and we're finding that the same officer is repeatedly not hitting that little thing twice, during an incident or after an incident, what is then the disciplinary process that is followed?
Well, first of all, I think good question. And the terminology sometimes being used out there. As I'm walking the street, if I'm walking Market Street and I'm having casual conversations and I'm not taking police action, your chief of police actually it's videotaping. It's not audio taping, and it's buffering over. Should I have to take police action, I would hit it twice. It would go back to 30 seconds. And then the time I hit it, it would start going audio and video, but it goes back 30 seconds to see what precipitated me hitting that. So there's going to be interactions if someone's in the street and say, "Hey, Chief, did you just videotape me?" No, it's videotaping, but there's no I'm not taking any police action. Or I would be taping everybody in public. Right now, it's buffering, but it's not taping. If I hit this twice, it'll tape the last 30 seconds. Getting to your part about where we have to look at training or discipline. Yes, absolutely. And, so because they're so new, we're doing reviews. We'll be looking at them. If there is any type of civilian complaint that comes into OPS, these things will be reviewed and we'll be looking at them. And then we'll be making sure that we address them. And if someone is a recidivist in doing these things, does it come a point where this person just isn't understanding the training, or is it intentional? And that's where I starts breaking off from the training into intentional, and or that starts going into the disciplinary process. So, we're trying to do the best training, getting them out the door. That's why we made sure everybody was trained. They went through the necessary training, and we're going to continue to do that training. So the answer is yes. If we start to see that, we see something that will be disciplined. Christine.
Kendra McDowell. Kendra McDowell. All right, do any of the council members have anything to say?
I do. I have a question, Chair.
I think you already went beyond your 2 comments, don't you?
Well, if I can't answer, you just tell me I can't do it then. You don't gotta ask like that.
I asked you like an adult would ask a question.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. Go ahead. What's your question?
Oh, thanks for allowing me to speak. So my question is, if a police, let the public, they have questions. So if I'm interacting with an officer, can I request that they cut their camera on when they're talking to me, if their camera isn't already on the boop boop audio?
Are you asking to ask an officer to turn the camera on, or you're asking?
Correct. Asking them to cut the audio on, because I understand that the visual is going and it's buffering every 30 seconds. But if they start talking to me and I realize, or I don't know how to realize, but I want to confirm, can I ask them, can you please cut on your video that has audio when you're interacting with me?
Yes, certainly with our training, if the incident or interaction is something that starts to escalate to a point where you're asking for it to be turned on, we absolutely could turn it on, depending on the incident. I would think dealing with hypotheticals right here, but we're asked, can we ask us to turn it off? And sometimes, there's an incident going on, we can't turn it off. But obviously, if there's been a victim of domestic violence, a child, or anything else like that, we would put in and say, we're turning this off at the request of the victim of a crime here, and we would actually, in certain situations, we would actually follow that request, but make sure we make that documented on the camera so it's actually on the audio part. But a certain situation where it's a casual conversation going in, if the camera, if you're asking for the camera to come on, Inspector Ash, in our training, have you been hit with that type of scenario where there's a person of the public asking for it to be turned on, And then I know each situation is different, but thinking of this hypothetical situation, what are we telling our officers to do in the training?
Councilwoman, yes, you can request the officer to record the interaction because Delaware is a one-party consent state.
Thank you for answering the question. That's it. Thank you.
Tanya Washington,
Yes, ma'am.
your hand is up.
No, I don't think so. Is my hand up?
All right, Michelle Harley, Councilmember Harley.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. After listening to the conversations and the comments on tonight, I'm very concerned about when are the cameras supposed to be on. It seems like it's a lot of variables with the procedure in terms of when a camera is supposed to be on, when it's supposed to be off. Because in my mind, I'm thinking if a camera is off and there is a conversation that escalates and the offers may be the one that is being overbearing or being rude or being disrespectful, I can't imagine him deciding to cut a camera on. So I'm just saying, this is something I will follow up later to really fully understand how this process works, so we can make sure that the public has confidence in all this time and money that we have spent into getting these cameras. So I just want to make sure that we have a clear process and the community understands that we're very sincere about these cameras holding the community as well as our Wilmington police officers accountable, and that there's transparency. But when you have all these variables going on, sometimes that can reduce and minimize. It can reduce and minimize confidence. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chief, how long do you think it would take the department to find an officer who was just not cooperating and using the cameras, either cooperating with the department or cooperating with the general public?
We haven't had any of that happen, ma'am. It's been several weeks because we cascaded that coming out. We're reviewing video and the cameras are never turned off. Right now, my camera's on. So I want that be clear that these cameras are never turned off when you're in uniform. And then the thing is to make sure, and this is best practices throughout the United States, if you're to take police action and or as Councilwoman Darby had asked, can we turn them on at a request? So we have to hit it twice. We don't lose 30 seconds before that. But the audio and the visual, because of the standards that we have to use, starts at that time of the event. To continuously record audio all day long, we also store this in a cloud as well. We also have to be able to cut off when we get an event number. But if it's recording the whole tour, where do you splice it up from different jobs to different jobs? So it's really a maintenance and expectation of the costs of storage, making sure we're defining on the moments of each incident, getting a body-worn camera number. So just to be clear, they're never off. But it's when the officer turns to hit it. Inspector Ash, please add to anything on that.
Thank you. This is the last call for anyone from the general public. Keith James.
Hi, so yes, my question is for Chief Tracy. So my question is, if a police officer is in his vehicle or with another police officer and a statement, let's say of racial or violent nature is made by the police officer, is that because they didn't hit the button, not able to be reviewed, and are those officers not able to be reprimanded for, things that they may say about the community in regards to their interactions or how they refer to community members? And then my second question would be for, I guess, the chair, Loretta Walsh. if the officer is saying that they need more money for the cloud space or the storage to continuously record, would it be possible to reallocate the money for the officers that they want to hire to be able to actually fund that? So that would be possible.
I don't have a clue on that one, Keith. I'm sorry. That would have to come through the finance people for the city, but I can find an answer out for you and get back to you.
I appreciate that, Chair. Thank you.
So, Chief, did you hear his first part of the question?
I just didn't know where we were at with the second question. We're not going to be audio taping with officers in a car unless they're going to an incident where it's police action is going to be taken. This is a practice that's used throughout the country, and anything that comes out where there might be inappropriate conversation, it's something that we take very seriously, and it's something that we would act upon if it should come to our attention.
Madam Chair, do I still have time to follow up with a question for the chief?
You already had 2 questions, but go ahead, Keith. I'll give you one more.
I appreciate that. So Chief Tracy, I understand that you guys take it seriously. So what are the ways that you're monitoring what police officers are saying? Does it have to be an earshot of another officer to hear and make a complaint, or a public, a citizen to make a complaint for it to I guess, get to your guys' attention? And if it's something that's serious that you guys are looking at, do you think that it would be appropriate to try to invest so that we could have that type of transparency with the police department?
Well, Keith, we always have that transparency. We take all that seriously. All the actions that our officers take, if it's brought to our attention from the public or from another police officer, we have an internal affairs division. We have an office of professional standards. The best thing that we would look at police officers, what they're doing when a camera's not on them. Now we're going to have cameras on them when they have interactions with the public. Interdepartmental conversations that are happening, should anything be said like that, it's absolutely not allowed. It's against our policy, and it's something that comes to our attention. We should treat very seriously.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief, and the inspector for your time. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Greetings to our new police chief, or I'm sorry, you misheard that one, Chief Tracy, to our new fire chief. How are you, Chief?
Doing well, Madam Chair and Council. Doing very well.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Which one do you want to take first, the fireworks or the
overview? Chief Pabone here also. He's here to discuss the fireworks.
Okay. Do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, we'll take that first, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Okay, to discuss fireworks. So pretty much just to give you a little bit of history, I believe in like 2018, there was some legislation that was passed, I guess, in Dover about certain fireworks being allowed. So currently, what Title 16 state is that no person shall sell, store, or possess to intend to sell any fireworks, firecrackers, rockets, sparklers, torpedoes, Roman candles. There are certain things that are allowed. Sparklers are allowed, and they're only allowed 30 days before New Year's Eve to be sold in the state, and also 4th of July. So that's pretty much it. Everything else has to be permitted by the fire marshal's office. There are some applications that need to be made to our office, and those are your big firework events. There's an application for public display of fireworks. There's an application to transport explosives and also to handle explosives. There's insurance that's required. There's a shooter's license that's required. There's date, location, map planning, drop zones, and things of that nature. Those are your fireworks that you see city events, Blue Rock Stadium are two of those examples. But that's pretty much it on fireworks. Unless you have any questions.
No, I just think neighborhoods are just extremely frustrated with the amount of fireworks going on around the city. And also, during COVID, a lot more people got dogs and pets too. And the dogs, for like the last 5 years at least, all throughout the city have really been going crazy when the fireworks start. And some areas are a lot more prevalent when it comes to the fireworks than others. It's just the way it is, I suppose. So what do you suggest they do if somebody is really going crazy?
So right now is, fireworks are illegal. If people are shooting fireworks that don't fit the criteria of sparklers or handheld or ground-based fireworks, dial 911 and, somebody will come out and investigate. And if, handle it that way. I do agree that they're very, I don't think people realize how dangerous fireworks are. Just to give you some quick stats on, National Fire Protection, 19,500 reported fires are due to fireworks annually. And 44% of all burns that are treated in July are due to fireworks. Children 10 to 15 make up for the highest age group in which fireworks people are being injured. So they are very serious, but again, they are illegal unless they have a permit. And in order to receive a permit, there's a lot of requirements. There's a lot of insurance, bonds that are required, and handling of explosives and education that's required.
Thank you. Councilmember Gray.
There's a lot of requirements, a lot of insurance.
Councilmember Gray.
Oh, thank you. Last year around Black Lives Matter and 4th of July, we got fireworks almost every night. And I got calls after calls after calls. And one, I'd like to know, what is the penalty for violating these laws? And two, how long does it take someone to respond? Because my husband could walk over there and see the kids lighting the fireworks, but the police nor anyone else got there in time to arrest or whatever the penalty is, these individuals. And this went on for at least a week. So one, I'd like to know what the penalty is, and two, what's the response time, and do you respond in the evening because they're doing this at night? Thank you.
So in reference to last year, I know last year, one of the things that we found, we had a lot more fireworks out than normal. I think a lot of it had to do because there were so many fireworks to be sold, and there were big sales. People were just, getting rid of fireworks. You saw 50% off, 75% off. So people were home. So a lot of people were purchasing fireworks. As far as the response time, I couldn't give you an answer because that's a WPD issue on response time. And I'm pretty sure that they're receiving probably a lot of calls. Shot spotters probably going crazy with the amount of fireworks. But I wouldn't know the answer on response time.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Do you know the penalty for violating these firework laws? So
right now, under the state penalties, are whoever violates this chapter shall be fined not less than $25 nor more than $100.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember McCoy.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I guess my question basically was, when it comes to education for our public, whether or not the Wilmington Fire Department whether or not they'd be capable of putting together like a flyer or something. I said, last year, trying to deter the people in my district, I was, put together like my little makeshift flyer. But I really feel as though people are not quite educated on what is legal, and they I guess last year they really didn't care. But this year, I think is a lot more quieter, and I think to really educate people on what is actually legal, because they just heard fireworks are legal again in Delaware, or legal in Delaware, and they had no idea, understanding that everything that was aerial or exploded was actually still illegal.
No, that's not a problem. We can work on a flyer using NFPA requirements, also city law, state law, and I can work on that information, and we can have that information sent out through our PIO. We can have that done by probably the end of this week.
Okay, Madam Chair, my follow?
Yes, Councilman.
Thank you. So to have that done and actually make certain that we maybe give that information to the person in graphic design to make it a little bit more appealing to the eye, so that young people could pretty much kind of have understanding at sight. And I'm also giving it out to adults as well. So whatever flyer that you put together, I will then be in turn handing out and trying to make certain I pass out within the community.
Okay. Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harley.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, so I just want to bank off of Councilmember McCoy's request. I am the sponsor chief of that legislation that was sponsored in 2018 around the fireworks. And in the legislation, it speaks about educating the public. And we even talked about, before the legislation was actually drafted, ways that the fire department could help with deterring some of this excessive fireworks for some of our youth, by going into the schools and educating students and schools, because a lot of the fireworks that we learned were being done, excessive fireworks were being pulled off and popped off by school age children. So my point I wanted to make is that I hope that that is something that, if it had not gotten started, that could be something that you can get started. So since there are only certain periods of times and certain dates that those particular fireworks can be done, maybe it's definitely worth picking up. And I don't know if you got that message or not. I know that there's been a transference of leadership, but that was definitely discussed with the previous fire chief, educating students in school. So that would be helpful as well. Even if it's once or twice a year, maybe the month before a particular holiday.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that. We can actually, we have personnel in our public education department that have experience with, putting on public education presentations, and they're very versed with the fireworks. That whatever the ways were that you spoke to Chief Donahue, if you could please forward them to me, I'll meet with Deputy Chief Pabone along with our public education inspector, and we'll definitely try to get a program, get it out, maybe on channel 22 WITN. We can make up a flyer and we can push it out to all council, and even the neighborhood associations might be another route where we can push some of that information out also.
Absolutely. Yes, that will be, I think that would be very helpful. But what did you ask me to send you?
If the ways you discussed with Chief Donahue in the past about how you wanted to, get this information out. That way I'm familiar with what you had spoke about back in 2018 on how to get this information out.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you very much.
Thanks.
Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I definitely agree with awareness and education. But when you quoted the penalties, and I hate to go the punitive way, but $25 to $100, I don't even think that would really be a deterrent to young adults using fireworks. It's such a thrill. It's something that's so forbidden. So maybe at some point we need to look at raising the fine, if nothing but a scare tactic. And when you put out your information, you can add, minimum fine $1,000, so, or something like that. I mean, you can't do that now, but I'm just saying, along with the education and making the community aware of the dangers, we need to look at increasing the punitive aspect of using fireworks, because it is a danger. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I agree. That would have to be done on the state level. We would actually have to meet with the state fire marshal's office to get that process started. But I do agree.
Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had two questions. One, wanted to find out whether or not there was a permit for Juneteenth, whether or not there's going to be any type of large firework display for Juneteenth in the city. That was one question.
No, I'd have to refer the deputy chief of bone if they even have any permits been submitted.
Yeah, not aware of any fireworks display. Maybe a gathering, but not fireworks display.
Okay.
So some of the requirements are, unless sometimes there are some situations where there are some rain dates. So we might go under the 30-day requirement, but there is a 30-day requirement to submit for the permit. There's a date of the display, a location of the display, where they're being stored. There has to be a bond with the city of Wilmington for $5,000. They have to pull an insurance policy for over $1 million, placing the city of Wilmington as an additional insuring. The amount, the size, the dimensions of the fireworks that are going to be shot that day, the location, the display area. So there are a lot of requirements, and there's a lot of pre-planning that goes in to these events. So the community usually knows. Again, like I said, there's a 4th of July, the Biden visit at the riverfront, the Blue Rock Stadium, some graduations. Those are typically your events that are approved by our office. Currently, right now, I have, besides all the Blue Rocks, 4th of July, and there's really nothing else that's permitted.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Pavone, Deputy Chief Pavone. Madam Chair, may I ask my second question?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So the second question is actually last year I talked to our former Chief Donahue and Deputy Chief Pavone about I actually wanted to consider repealing that state law with the legalization of the fireworks because things had gotten so bad. So some of the questions that I asked them, I don't recall ever getting that white data sheet or just getting some of the, I just wanted to find out a little bit more information on the reason why that law was passed in 2018 and whether or not there was any type of revenue that we were, that we may miss because of now we're able to sell fireworks. And I just wanted to find out if that information is readily available, if I can have it sent to me.
The actual when it was passed in 2018 by the state.
Yeah, well, when we during 107, our last term, you and I and the chief actually had that meeting. We had discussed some of the things that we probably needed to have readily available if we wanted to talk to anyone in the General Assembly about repealing that, the fireworks becoming legal. I said did not want to mess up any type of revenue for the state of Delaware if it was that much, but I never had any, no more information actually came. So after that meeting, I didn't receive, I don't believe I received that data sheet.
Okay, I have this information right here in front of me, so I'll make sure you get it tomorrow morning, or everyone receives it tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I see no members of the public signed up to speak. No other council members. So now we'll move on to your next subject. And that is the overview of promotion and discipline measures within the Wilmington Fire Department.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'll start off with the promotional system. The WFD has utilized an independent company to administer promotional testing since the early 90s. We utilize professional testing services to remove any biases such as favoritism, nepotism, etc. The testing consists of a written examination and structural panel interviews dealing with fire-related emergencies and personnel issues. The professional testing service provides assessors who are peers in other departments, other fire departments. Typically, these assessors range in rank from captain to deputy chief. The assessors bring with them many years of fire service experience in leadership positions. The end result is candidates are placed into a banding system by the testing service based on their cumulative score. Once the bands have been established by that testing company, it is sent to the chief of fire. The chief of fire will then make his selections from the first band as promotions arise. We've been doing this. We've had several companies since the early 90s that have administered these tests. The recent company that we're using, we've had favorable feedback from all personnel that participated in the promotional process. So we have continued to use this same testing service.
With the testing service, is it only written or partially oral?
They offer both the written test and the panel interviews, the oral interviews. They also tell the candidates there's orientation sessions prior to taking the written test, because that's the first phase. They also tell them all the materials that are required to study, prepare for the written exam.
And again, who is normally on an interview panel? What are the ranks?
The ranks are captain to deputy chief, and they're from departments, all over the United States, male, female. But like I said, they range in rank from captain all the way to deputy chief.
Okay. How long do these things normally take?
Excuse me, ma'am?
How long do these tests normally take?
Well, we'll start the process. It's next year, we'll start the process again to establish the next list. And that'll start in February. There'll be orientation. They'll then take a test in March, beginning of April. From there, we move on to the panel interviews. We're looking at approximately 3 to 4 months. We have to, due to our collective bargaining agreement, we have to have the promotional list out by June 15th. So normally the process is, 3 to 4 months in the works.
And the lists are good for how long?
The list is good for 2 years. In each band, depending on how many candidates are in the band, we cannot move on to the next band until all those candidates in that first band are exhausted due to promotions or the list expires.
And about how many a year do you use?
Excuse me, ma'am?
You don't have a major turnover in your department, do you?
No, just actually in the last couple of years, we have had a turnover. We've seen a lot of lieutenants, captains retire just because of their time on the job. They've reached their max of like 30 years. And we have become a very young department, probably 3/4 of our department right now has just under 10 years, just under 10 years. And that goes for our officers. We have some very young officers due to the turnover that we've had. So turnover obviously is going to slow down as we go forward because of we are losing guys through attrition.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a few questions about the promotional system. I think it's great that a promotional test is outsourced where there's a written panel and interviews where it's not biased. So that is a great system. And then you're placed into a banding system based on your scoring. However, once you're in the banding system, the chief decides who they want to select to be promoted. So if there's 9 people in band 1 and there's 3 open positions, the chief can select whoever he wants out of that 9 to fit into those 3 positions, which is very biased. So what ways have you guys worked to not make it biased? Is there a merit system? Is it once you're in, I'm only talking about the band, once you're placed in the band from the outside source, is there a merit system? What decisions are put into place in deciding who gets the next 3 positions? Because it could come off that it is based on, once you are in your bands, that it is based off of favoritism or who the chief wants in those positions until they exhaust that first band.
Ma'am, it's not there's not a merit system in place. Historically, since I've been on in 1993, it is always this practice. And like I said earlier, how we've gone to this outside agency doing the testing. All the chiefs that I've worked under have all had that opportunity to pick who they feel that's in that band that fits the organizational needs, the best person to be on their team. Like I said, ever since 1993, that's been going on, and that's approximately 7 chiefs right now.
May I follow up?
Yes, council member.
Yeah, so within the bands, and it's not based on merit, it's based on who the chief believes is the next person in line to become promoted. Within the department, have you guys done a survey specifically with minority and Black firefighters to understand the culture and the things that they're feeling within the department around promotion?
No, ma'am, we have not since I've been here. That's something that obviously we can look into moving forward. We need to do a better job. I will tell you that we need to do a better job encouraging minorities to participate in the test. Just over the years, we've never put any emphasis on that. And I know that I've said this to Chief of Staff and the Mayor, that is one of my initiatives. I want to make sure we're doing a better job encouraging the minorities, male and female, on this department to take part in the test. Both my deputies, I've expressed that vision to them also.
Yes, I think not just talking about the promotional test that's outsourced. I'm more concerned with that the chiefest level, where there are other people feel like they're being overlooked, or that white firemen are being selected over Black firemen, even if the Black fireman has better credentials. That is the issue or problem, not the promotional outsource, how to get more minorities to take the test. But I'm actually talking about who score around the same score as other firemen and who are feeling like they're being overlooked. So historically, how many Black firemen have been promoted in the last 10 years is something that I asked and I have not gotten the answer to from you guys. And I really want to know, in the last 10 years, not counting minorities, but how many Black firemen have been promoted. This is a primarily African-American Black city. and it's not reflected on the fire department of that percentage within. So I'm really concerned about the promotional system and how many Black people, I guess, within the last 10 years who are firemen have been promoted within the fire department.
To answer that, I have that information. I can forward that information to you. There have been multiple since 2011 to this date. We've had multiple promotions. 2011, we had a Hispanic male lieutenant. I mean, I go down the list all the way to present day. If you looked at the promotions, I do believe that they were diverse in the selection. I don't feel like somebody's getting looking at their credentials when these choices are being made.
I think, Madam Chair, if I may, it's what should be really the focus of this is the fact that, and the chief has already said this, that we have to encourage more minorities to take the test. So while Councilperson Darby is asking about the number of minorities that have been promoted, you have to balance that out also with the number of minorities that actually wanted to participate in the test. You can't look at one and not look at the other.
Chief, any information that you're forwarding, please forward to all of council also.
Madam Chair, yes, I will. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Councilmember Darby, are you finished?
I wasn't finished, but no, I have one more question that I want to confirm. The banding system for the promotional test is only for up to lieutenant. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. It's for lieutenant and captains. Lieutenant and captains only.
Yeah. So after captains, what is the merit and what is the process for promotion after captain level?
Once you get to the battalion chief level and the deputy chief level, they're appointed positions and they're chosen by the chief of the department. There's no testing for battalion chief and there's no testing for the deputy chief positions.
All right. So it's based on who the chief wants in that position. Is that correct?
That is correct. Who fits the organizational needs, who's best fit for the team and the vision of the department.
And how is best fit defined with you guys? How do you describe that? It's like, what are the merits other than I just want that person in that position because I can appoint people?
I can tell you, I don't do that. And I've only recently just had a couple promotions, but I don't do that. Leadership skills, strong leadership skills, positive attitude, willing to, go the extra mile, push forward. We need to do a lot to keep that. We have a great department. We have great men and women on this department. But right now we're in a position where we need to move forward. We need to get better. And that's how I choose who I've chose.
And I have one more question about the
Go ahead.
Promotional system in regards to, are you familiar with the Wilmore Decree? You guys hear me? I don't know if my internet went out.
No, your internet's going out again.
Do you guys hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Yes, I was asking specifically about the Wilmore Decree. So the Wilmore Decree was a something that happened back in the 70s and 80s where there was clear discriminations happening against minorities, specifically African Americans, Black people in the department, that they weren't being promoted at the same rate as white firemen. When I look at the Wilmore Decree, I'm trying to figure out, is there a statute of limitation on you guys making sure that you're following best practices to make sure that minority, specifically African American, Black fire people are not being impacted by unfair promotional systems?
Well, if I can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Wilmore Decree, that was a consent decree that happened over 38 years ago. And if I'm not mistaken, your staff has asked the law department to look into that to determine whether there's a statute of limitations on it. And they have not gotten back to you that I'm aware of. So the chief is not going to be able to answer that particular question.
Okay, thank you. And then I think like maybe sometime you can share with me what the fire department vision is, because you're saying that was what you look at for promotions. I'm still not understanding how their people are promoted with that unless they are selected by the chief of staff just based on who he wants in that position. I'm still not understanding what the merit is outside of I just want that person to be in that position.
It's been this way, like I said, since I come on, and that chief, he's picking his team. He or she's going to pick his team, and he wants the people that he knows they're trustworthy, they have integrity, they have strong core values, and it's
able to get along with other people. I mean, every chief has his own criteria in terms of what he's looking for in the candidate, and that's how he selects them. So it's not like a list where you just go down and check off each box. Just the chief's vision and actually the leadership skills that he's looking for to move his organization forward. That's the best way I can tell you.
Thank you. It's still not it's not clear. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Harley.
Thank you, Councilmember Walsh. So first of all, I do want to commend Councilmember Darby for asking some very pointed, I think, important questions as it relates to the whole topic of recruitment and upper mobility as it relates to promotion. Because if I didn't think that I had a fair chance of really rising all the way to the top in a particular company, there's a possibility that I probably would not even be interested in working in a particular company or working with a particular entity. I think that with this new leadership and our new fire chief sounding like you chief or a man of integrity, and you seem to want to improve the department, and most of all, I would think that you will want to leave a legacy of improving it in a way under your leadership where you can make a measurable difference. And I think it's something to consider as it relates to how can you be more inclusive and more transparent and more standardized. It's not that easy. It's not that hard. Excuse me. It's really not that hard to do. It takes a willingness. But one of the things that I learned, even becoming a council member, is that I used to hear that all the time. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way we've always done it. And it's okay for the people that was around that knew how you always done it. But you have new people that come on board that don't always know how it was always done. And what they know is what the charter says, or they know what's in black and white. So I would like to just ask you to consider maybe lifting and elevating the level of integrity to consider a standardized process that's very open, where individuals that join that organization can see that if I work hard, if I do what is expected of me, there's a possibility of me becoming the fire chief one day based on maybe having a team to weigh in and a scoring system, because it sounds very, very much like an old boys network. And especially when you keep hearing people say that's the way we've always done it. That's the way we've always done it. And maybe it has worked. And maybe it did end up producing or identifying some good quality men and women. So I'm not just speaking on that. What I'm speaking on is how can you think about improving it, making it better, making it more inclusive, and making it more transparent to make it inviting to people of color to see themselves and imagine themselves maybe being a fire chief one day. So it's just something to think about. Thank you.
I say something real quick. Just real quick, Councilmember Harley, and this is for Councilmember Darby as well. When we look back on the history of the Wilmington Fire Department, let's keep in mind that we've had more minority chiefs than we've had Caucasian chiefs. Now we've had Wilmore, we've had Armstead, we've had Good, then we had Ford and Donahue and Willie Patrick. And so when we look at that history, you have to ask yourself, did they pick the right, appointed fire person to be in the battalion chief position as well? Because you're asking us to look at it for over a period of years, but that's going to include your minority fire chiefs. So, you're talking about the good old boys club. I hope that they would have been at least cognizant of the fact that they were in that position and they had to bring their brethren up as well. So let's just keep that in mind when we're looking at the history of the Wilmington Fire Department.
Yes, can I respond to that, Madam Chair? So, Chief, I'm sorry. Is it Chief of Staff? My brain is really dead here. What I want to say is that I agree and I fully understand what you're saying. I am not thinking really of just one color. I'm thinking about whoever decides to become a firefighter. We have been talking about people of color specifically somewhat tonight, but I'm saying this on behalf of Black, white, Hispanic, Mexican, or whomever. So that's why I said I'm not really focusing so much on the past as it relates to whether it was how many Blacks or whites. I'm focusing on the process. And when I just think about a process where people are handpicked, it just, again, I just feel as though when you have a standardized process that's clear and open and people can see themselves matriculating in a career, I just feel as though I believe that it's more inviting. So it's not pointing fingers or anything like that. I'm just suggesting a continuous improvement process. And since they have a new leader, I'm just suggesting that he consider a standardized process to be able to recruit more Blacks, whites, Latinos, Mexicans, etc. That's where I'm coming from. Thanks.
Councilman Harley, I completely agree. And just like I said earlier, we've done a poor job of encouraging, our Black firefighters, our Hispanic firefighters, male and female, to take part in the test. But it also goes back to we've done a poor job also with recruitment. However, we've changed that. Moving forward, we want to be more aggressive with our recruiting. Just this last class, actually we have 26 recruits in right now. It's one of our most diverse class we've had in a very long time. And we're very proud of that because we took the extra steps. We really took a close look at our recruitment. In the past, Chief Donahue, he formed a recruitment team, and those that wanted to participate, probably about 13, 14 personnel that participated, and we reviewed our hiring process. We also reviewed how are we getting the message out to the city residents, and all their suggestions and recommendations. A lot of them we put into place, and like I said, I'm very proud the class that we have right now. We have, it's a very diverse class, which this is it's the start. Like I said, we've done a poor job, but I didn't do that. That's been going on for years. Now we recognize it. We have to do better. I completely agree, and everything you said, I definitely take into memory.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Chief. And that was a good comment. I think that was made for the public and for the public to hear, because again, continuous improvement. I think every leader should be thinking about how they can improve and make it better for the time that they are leading. So and that's what new leadership is all about, is to bring in new ideas and better policies and better ways to make it a better organization. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And that's very, very positive. And I just want to say, keep up the good work and keep on being open to those ideals. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you. I agree with a lot what Councilwoman Harley was speaking of. Like with new leadership, I hope that we can work together to talk about promotions. And I think it's more important for you to listen to the minorities, Hispanic, the Black firefighters in the department. I don't know if that includes doing surveys or focus group, but I hope that you take that to heart to do that, because I have the history of promotions within the last 10 years, and whites are being promoted at a higher rates than Black firemen. And I also wanted to add that despite the data going back 10 years and the chief may have been Black or minority, all skin folks and kin folks, as we know. So that doesn't matter to me. If they are promoting unfairly, then it needs to be addressed. So I just hope that you're willing to work together so that we can figure out how to improve the promotion system, where it's not based on who the chief just wants to go up into the next position and based off of some fire department vision that can't even be really defined to how people are promoted and selected to the next level. So I want to say thank you. Congratulations on your new position. And I have been emailing and I have not gotten a response back from you. So I'm hoping that soon I can get a response back from you so that we can work together. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Does anyone from the public have anything to say? See no one from the public and no more council members listed. I thank you too for your time. I appreciate it. And so does the rest of council.
Thank you.
Sorry, I thought we were going to disciplinary policy too. I'm sorry.
I know. What, it was promotional and discipline.
But we didn't know the questions.
What were the questions for the discipline?
Okay, you'll do that through the chair too.
Oh, Madam Chair, what were the questions for the discipline?
Yeah.
Councilmember Darby, did you have a question? Or just a shout
Yes,
out?
I sent it. No, I do have this questions. I've been emailing the fire department with no response. So I have questions. I'm bringing it up right now about the disciplinary system. I had requested to understand the disciplinary system better. I'm bringing up my notes now. It was one of them was about the trial boards. So if you're a firefighter and you have an infraction, you go to a trial board. I had questions about how people are selected to be on the trial board. Is it a random selection? Is it a random selection by a person? Is it a random selection by a system that is used for who serves on the trial board to make a decision?
Thank you, Chief. Give us a blow-by-blow of how you start
With
a discipline against a firefighter.
Okay, well, there's several levels. An infraction by a firefighter, the lowest level would be like an official warning. That's a warning that's documented and placed into that firefighter's file.
And they're usually given for things like?
Just you know, they misplaced a piece of equipment during checkouts and we didn't find out about it till, you know, 24 hours later. So we're basically just progressive, you know, we're giving that guy or girl, you know, hey, here's the heads up, but look, can't do it again. So they're going to get official warning. From that, we move up to reprimands, written reprimand for a more serious violation. We have classes of violations. And as it pertains to the trial board, the deputy chief of the fire marshal's office, fire prevention division, Deputy Chief Pavone, he works off a rotating list when he's picking members or officers for trial boards.
Yes,
Is
thank
any of
you
this,
for the.
is any of this covered by a union contract?
Yes, ma'am. It's in our collective bargaining agreement or disciplinary policies.
Could you at least pull that out and send copies of that to all of council?
Yes, we can get you that information. That we can send that all out tomorrow. I can gather that and send it out.
Am I able to follow up to the response to the question I asked?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so for the trial board, with the selection, so it's randomly selected by a person who does a rotating list. Why can't a system be used to randomly select who's on the trial board so there's not any bias, that there's not constantly the same people being selected on a random system? How are we making sure that that is not biased and impacting minority people who are sitting in front of the trial boards?
So I can hit on it because I'm the person that selects it. Again, I don't want to talk about past practices, but I know that since I've been in office, certain infractions call for certain ranks. So if a person is charged with a Class A violation, which is a fireable offense, and they choose not to plead guilty and they choose to go to trial board and not see the deputy chief, then what happens is that infraction, let's just say, will call for 3 battalion chiefs. There's a list of the battalion chiefs by seniority. The battalion chiefs that are excluded, that would be excluded from this panel, are the ones that are the charging officer, which most likely will be the internal affairs officers, which is Battalion Chief Zipfel, any battalion chief who may have charged that member or is a witness to the infraction. So I will go by the 1st battalion chief. Those 3 battalion chiefs will be scheduled for that trial board. The senior battalion chief will be the president of the board. After, let's just say that trial board happens, next week we have another trial board. If I skipped a battalion chief because he was a witness, I go back to that battalion chief and I go based on seniority until the list rotates back around. That's how every officer is chosen. So an officer will never sit on a board until that list rotates and it goes back to that officer. So if there's 30 lieutenants, that officer will never sit on a board until every other officer has been selected and given an opportunity to sit on trial board. Now, historically, I have no idea how they've done it before, but I have a rotating list. I keep a copy of every that's selected, and it's stapled to every trial board. So I can't handpick any officer. It's done by seniority.
Yes, thank you. So what I wasn't saying handpick as in you can just select whoever, but within the options that you do have, that some people aren't being picked to sit on the trial board, or that the trial board is being made up in a very biased way. And I think with a person setting up who's on a trial board, even though you might say today that that's not happening, I just think it's very faulty with a person who selects who the trial board is. And there are people who are reporting in the fire department that they are officers who are high ranking who have not ever sat on a trial board or haven't been on one in decades or years. So I just think that that is another system as new leadership that can be looked at, and how trial boards are selected and how it can be biased to minority firemen who sit there. There was an example that was given to me of a white firefighter and a black firefighter who committed the same infraction, same day, same thing. And one person just, I can't remember what the disciplinary action was, but let's say the white firefighter got 10 days suspension. The other, and the same black firefighter who committed the same infraction got 15 days. Right? So there's a discrepancy, and I asked for these in the email several times on understanding, and so that I'm able to compare the data between white officers and black officers who commit the same infraction to see what the discipline that was given to them, and also looking at the appeals that may or may not happen. And I have not received that information yet, and I requested several times.
So just to answer the rotating list, I think by using the system that we have now, you're almost guaranteed that every officer sits on a trial board. It's picked. So if you got 10 officers, you go 1, 2, 3. You go to 4 for your next violation. The date that is used is the date that the person chooses to go to trial board. So the date that is stamped. So then you go 4, 5, 6. If 5 is a witness, I skip 5, I go to 7. But then I come back to 5 for the next trial board. So the system that I use pretty much guarantees that every officer. Now, I agree that in the past, officers, I was a lieutenant for maybe 7 or 8 years and never sat on a trial board because it was done randomly. Now, what happens is that doesn't really assist or helps that officer, because that officer can be on the job for so many years and have no experience, and then one day become a battalion chief and he's set on one board and now he's the president. So the system we have now is almost guaranteed that everyone gets a fair shot unless they're a witness or a charging officer. Now, as far as the 2 infractions of the white officer and the black firefighter that both get the same charges. Now, there's a lot of different circumstances, you know. Did one member agree or take a deputy chief's hearing, which means he pled guilty, so he gets the minimum required charge. So if that charge is 15 to 30 days because he pled guilty, he got 15 days. Did the black firefighter go to trial board and sit in front of a panel of 3 members, and they found him guilty, and they said, we're going to charge you 20 days or 25 days. So again, it's not apples and apples. It's and they're also subjective. There's also, not in a subjective way, but I'm talking about there's different members of the board. So one board might say 15 days, the other board might say 20 days. That's just the easiest way that I can explain it.
The thing is, every situation is different.
Yes.
It's not a one size fits all. Depends on how it plays out.
Yes.
Yeah, we would have to know all the details in regards to that.
Yes, thank you. I'm familiar with the details, and it was very consistent on both sides, and it was still given 2 different things. But thank you.
Well,
Okay, nobody from the public has signed up to speak, and no other council members. So I thank you and wish you the very best of luck in your new position too, Chief.
thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank you both for your time.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Night.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Right.
Everyone.
Good night.
Said that before you hung up.
I don't care.